USC. So USC is coming into the Big Ten next year. We talked about Oregon, and we had some Nebraska fans talking about their experience with coming into the Big Ten and talking about how Oregon might have a little bit of a rougher path than what we might think. Well, USC is coming in, and we haven't talked about them as much because Oregon is kind of that first team that people are thinking will probably contend in their first year. I don't know if how many people think USC will contend, but they're definitely going to be a tough team to play. Lincoln Riley is a good coach. Many regard him as a top 5 coach in college football last year. I don't know where he's kind of universally regarded this year, but they hired Deonton Lynn, who was a fantastic defensive coordinator for UCLA last year, and he could do the same thing with USC with a lot of the talent that they have. So, Connor, we'll go to you first. What are some fair expectations for USC fans entering the Big Ten? Are they looking at yearly contender, maybe contending every 2 or 4 years, maybe contending every 5 to 10 years? What are your thoughts on realistic expectations for USC?
I don't think anyone, especially USC fans, will agree with me here, but I think it's probably like a 5 to 10 year thing. I'm one of those guys that I just think that it's easier said than done to come join a new conference. And if they do the very stereotypical thing, like come and have to play in Minnesota or Wisconsin come December or January, those aren't going to be wins for them, in my opinion. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them regress a little bit here. Obviously, they lost a lot of talent going to the draft this year. It will be interesting to see, especially with Alex Grinch staying in the conference, how they match up against him. He was just a god awful coordinator for them. They did get a huge step up, but yeah, I put him as if I'm looking at the bottom here. It says tier 2, 1, 2, or 3. I'd put him at a 2 right now. I don't think USC fans would agree. They have themselves as a top 3 team already, but I just don't see it that way. I remember the Holiday Bowl, probably 2019, and Iowa beat them by I don't know, 20 points or so. So they just don't match up well. Yeah, we beat them pretty good, man, and it's the same kind of style offense. So
yeah, I put together kind of a tier list of stuff I was seeing from other people. So this isn't exactly my tier list, but this was something that I kind of put together through looking at other people's tier lists. And what I kind of came up with was tier 1 is Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan. Those are you expect those guys to be contending year in and year out, as long as there are no, big issues or something going on. Those are the teams that should be contending year in and year out. Tier 2 are teams that, should be contending, but they might have a year or two where they are kind of down for a little bit, but they'll pop right back up and be contending again. That's Iowa, Penn State, Washington. I didn't really agree with that, but hey, that's what a lot of people put them there as, and then Wisconsin. And then tier 3 was kind of like that contending every 5 to 10 years type of deal. And that was Minnesota and Michigan State. And then tier 4, they can contend, but it's not going to happen very often. I also had a disagreement here, but Maryland, Nebraska, Northwestern, UCLA. And then tier 5 was Illinois, Indiana, Purdue, Rutgers. That's the one where it's it's going to be a miracle if they're, contending in the Big Ten, stuff like that. So again, that's not exactly my list that I fully agree with, but it is from looking at other people's lists that I found on, articles and online internet that kind of seemed to be where most people were having these people at. So Zach, what are your fair expectations for USC in the Big Ten? And then if you had to insert them somewhere on this tier list, where would you think to insert them?
I think I'm on record on your show actually of saying I don't know if USC is getting bowl eligible next year, which I've been walking back slowly. They have an absurd schedule though next year, particularly non-conference. LSU, Notre Dame out of conference. They have to go to Michigan. They have to go to Washington. They host Nebraska at home, Penn State at home, and I think. The issue is, I think USC could be a tier 1 school, with the resources, the recruiting. But I think a lot depends on what everyone else is doing around them. And also, did Lincoln Riley get this defensive coordinator hire right? Because I think that the problem they run is I think Dan Lynn I think he's legit. But if they don't get the success right in year 1 and year 2, I think they're already playing from behind, and I think they will continue to play from behind because unlike the Pac-12, which the Pac-12 was a good league last year, but like remember everybody thought they were going to be the Pac-12 contender, and they lost 5 games. They lost to Notre Dame by 28 points. I mean, that's not a national championship contender to lose to Notre Dame by 28 points. And that was with Caleb Williams. Now, I know the defense is terrible, but if you look at their recruiting and the transfer portal, it has not looked great for them. I don't care how any USC fan slices it. There have been USC fans who have said, well, they weren't going to be program builders anyway, the players who transferred out. And yeah, we didn't recruit, but we still have some great players. And they do, which is why I think it's hard. I think where I would look at is what's the 5-year trajectory of Michigan and Penn State and Washington and Wisconsin? Because I think if you start to look at those schools and they start to dip, then I think USC becomes a tier 1 school. Because you're talking about, I think Ohio State and Oregon are well positioned right now in that tier 1. But like we still don't know what's going to happen with Michigan. Like Michigan kind of feels like it's on fire right now, and we still haven't heard anything from the NCAA. I still don't know where Penn State is. I feel like maybe this is the last year of their window. Washington, I don't know what's going to happen because of, with Jed Fish, they lost Kalen DeBoer. They lose like literally their entire offense. And Wisconsin, like I want to believe in Luke Fickell, but he just brought in Alex Grinch, and we just got done talking about how bad Alex Grinch is. I don't understand it. I love Luke Fickell. I think he will do great, but you have a lot of question marks right now. Whereas a month ago, I didn't think there was as many question marks in the Big Ten. So I think I would say I'm in between that tier 1, tier 2 stage with them. But I think any USC fan that says they're a lock to be tier 1, like you need to level with yourself a little bit and recognize there are way more question marks than Oregon or Ohio State right now. You probably have the same amount of question marks as a Michigan or a Wisconsin at this point.
Yeah, no, when I was looking at stuff, it seemed like most people kind of had them tier 3. And that was one of the issues I had with it, because in my mind, I swap USC and Washington and say, USC tier 2, Washington tier 3. That's just in my mind what I see more. And I think the future is bright for USC in it, that kind of like what you were talking about, like as these question marks continue to happen, recruiting is only going to get better for USC because there are only 2 teams in California that are power conference teams, them and UCLA. And the rumor is that UCLA can't even scrounge up $1 million to be in their NIL fund. So like if USC has an NIL fund, they're going to do pretty good out there in California, even if they're not, winning the Big Ten every year, because guess what? That's going to be the California school. Now, Oregon and Washington could dip in there a little bit, but still the hometown school is USC. So I think the future is bright for them, but I love that you brought up the schedule, because to me, like USC can be a tier 2 team, but they could go 8-4 this year and not look like a tier 2 team, but they're still a tier 2 team because they have that talent. Because I mean, like, let's just go through the schedule really fast. Who here is a gimme cupcake game? LSU, not a gimme cupcake game. Utah State, yes, right?
Mm-hmm.
At Michigan, I mean, no.
Still no.
Like even
Still
if they
no.
have like even if they have the sanctions and stuff like that, which we have no idea what's going to happen, but like, they still have Sharon Moore, who won games for them last year, bringing back guys on defense. Like that's still a really good Michigan team. So Wisconsin at home, no. At Minnesota, like maybe if it was at home, but
if it was home, yeah, but away, no chance. That's not a cupcake, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I would probably pick them to win if they were at home, but even at Minnesota, I don't even know if I'd pick them to win.
I agree.
So, because I mean, Minnesota, I think they're better than people give them credit for. Penn State, no. I mean, even though it's at home, like at Maryland, I mean, maybe, but like, how tough is the road? You know, traveling on the road actually going to be? So
well, and with that, just not to, goodness, I can't remember his name. It's the coach of Maryland, head coach.
Mike Locksley.
Locksley. How do I forget who Locksley is? Like, he is like, he boggles my mind of how he loses the gimme games, but then he'll like come close to
play up. Yeah.
Really. Yeah. Like his teams play up and down with the competition more than maybe anyone else currently in the Big Ten.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's going to be a gimme game if Mike Locksley doesn't get his guys ready. But if he does, then you're in for a war because, like, yeah, I mean, we saw what they did to Michigan last year. Like, that was a war. Now Rutgers at home. I mean, it seems like
I still love Rutgers, man. I
right, and like that's the thing. Rutgers, like, they're gonna have a really good offensive line this year, and Kyle Monungai is coming back, and like it's either Gavin Wimsatt or Ethan Kaliak-Manis, which I don't think either one is like the best quarterback in the world, but they both have experience and they're both older. So, I mean,
right? No, I agree completely.
I think USC will probably win that game, but I'm not gonna say it's a cupcake.
Oh no, definitely not.
Yeah.
At Washington, that's not a cupcake.
At least they have like a familiarity with them now.
Yeah. Nebraska at home. If Matt Rule's bringing back as much talent as we thought, I mean, we'll see what Dylan Raiola is, but
that's my upset of the year. I think I've said that several times, but I'm sticking to that. I think Nebraska gets USC on the road.
Yeah.
For sure.
I can see that too. At UCLA, like, again, like all these teams that like you would think, oh, if they're at home, yeah, they're a cupcake. They're going on the road, like, so
yeah, they're not kind of screwed, man. They did. There's no doubt.
And then they're going to finish it off with Notre Dame.
Yeah,
they play one group of 5 team. Notre Dame play one group of 5.
That's crazy.
What were you saying, Zach?
I was gonna say, I mean, Notre Dame and LSU, you're talking probably 2 top 15, top 10 teams by the end of the season.
Top 20 at the very least, yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, I think there's a legitimate chance that USC could go, 10-2. I think there's also a legitimate chance they go 7-5.
Right. But even if they're 7-5, I still feel like they're a tier 2 team.
Right.
Their record won't look like it, but
well, it goes. I think it speaks not just to the strength, like the strength of the Big Ten. Like, you're not just like the issue with the Big Ten more and more now is, back 10 years ago, you had like Ohio State and like Iowa would rise up, or Wisconsin would rise up, or Michigan State would rise up, but like everybody else was terrible. And like, that's just not the case anymore. Like, even like I get on Minnesota and PJ Fleck all the time because I think, I feel like PJ Fleck does less with more, but like, there's a reason why they went 5-7 last year. Is because the Big Ten's actually pretty good, like across the board. And I think if USC thinks that they're coming into a conference that's a bunch of cupcakes in Ohio State and Michigan, they're so wrong. And like, I really appreciate you bringing up the Holiday Bowl, because I remember, I think I was doing the ESPN Bowl Mania thing and with some buddies, and they're like, "You think I was going to beat USC?" And I'm like, "I was going to get bullied in that game," and they got bullied in that game. And I think every game, aside from the Rose Bowl in 2016, which was the amazing Saquon run, that's that play that he went like 75 yards. It was absurd, and they ended up losing. Penn State ended up losing. I think that's the last time USC has beaten a Big Ten team.
We beat USC.
Yeah, you said Iowa got bullied, but you meant USC got bullied.
Yeah, it's USC got bullied. Okay. I think the last. Sorry, thank you.
You're good.
In the Rose Bowl in 2016 was the last time USC beat a Big Ten team.
Yeah,
and that was
Penn State. So too.
Yeah, like Iowa's beat them, Ohio State's beat them. I feel like feel like Wisconsin maybe has beaten them. No, not Wisconsin. But
I was thinking Wisconsin, but I don't know.
I'll have to go back and look. But no, you're right. I mean, like the Big Ten, like for as much crap as the Big Ten gets for having weaker bottom tier teams, like the bottom tier teams in the Big Ten still beat the bottom tier teams in the ACC. The bottom tier teams in the Big Ten are still able to contend with, the bottom tier of the SEC. Like it's the gap is not as large as some people make it out to be. But I think Chris brings up a good point here. He says USC needs a defense to be competitive. Until they find that, they're a third tier team in the conference. You're right, Chris. And I am being a little bit preemptive saying they're a tier 2 team because I believe in Deonton Lynn to give them a good defense this year. But, at the same time, they could just have a terrible defense. And then it's like, okay, they're a third tier team. It just kind of depends on this year and what we get from them. So
I wish we played them early in the year this year because I think we could actually put up a lot of points on them before they find their groove. Get a little bit of confidence for the year.
Yeah, you don't play them at all, do you?
No, not this year.
Yeah. You have to. Well, you guys have like 5 rivals, so it's going to be hard for you to play the.
Yeah, we have a lot of protected games. It's kind of wild.
Penn State has none, and Iowa has like 5.
I don't get it.
Nobody hates.
I'm not mad though.
Yeah. All right, that was a good discussion, guys. Let's move on. Thanks for listening to the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out, get in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.